thought it was just an old doll. Broken, forgotten, harmless. So I left it at that lonely graveyard. But the next morning, it was back, sitting on my porch, staring at me. And that was only the beginning. I should have never touched it. If you're into true horror, real chills, and stories that'll make you sleep with the lights on, you're in the right place. Stick around till the end, because what happened after I left that doll will haunt you. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this with someone brave. At first, it was little things, so small I brushed them off. I'd leave the doll on the living room shelf, and later I'd find it sitting by the window in the kitchen. I assumed I must have moved it and forgotten. That happens, right? I'm forgetful sometimes, but then it showed up in places I knew I hadn't touched. One morning, it was on my bed, propped against my pillow, staring straight up at the ceiling. I laughed nervously, told myself maybe I'd just thrown it there without thinking. I was trying so hard to stay logical, but logic doesn't explain how my dog started refusing to enter the living room. He'd just sit at the doorway, hackles raised, growling at the corner where the doll usually sat. And my cat, she started hiding in places she never did before, like under the sink or behind the washer. I'd never seen her act that way. Animals sense things we don't. I started to wonder if they were seeing something I wasn't. At night, I'd hear strange sounds, soft tapping on the floor like footsteps. Sometimes it sounded like faint laughter. I'd get up, check every room, but the house would be silent, still. I told myself I was dreaming, half asleep, maybe playing tricks on myself. I even stopped drinking caffeine after dinner, just to calm my nerves. One night I heard what sounded like whispering, so soft I couldn't make out the words, but I knew it was inside the house. That was the first time I felt something wasn't just weird. It was wrong, deeply wrong. And yet, even then, I kept telling myself I was just tired, overworked, imagination running wild. But something inside me was starting to whisper too. What if it's not in your head? I couldn't take it anymore. After nearly 2 weeks of restless sleep, flickering lights, cold spots in the hallway, and that thing constantly showing up where it shouldn't be, I snapped. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just stood there one night, holding it in my hands, staring at its glassy eyes and cracked porcelain face, and whispered, "You don't belong here." There was no plan at first. I just drove. Middle of the night, headlights cutting through fog. No music, no podcasts, just silence and the hum of the tires against the road. I remembered this old cemetery out past the edge of town. Not a well-kept place, the kind that doesn't get many visitors. Overgrown grass, broken stones, no lights. I hadn't been there since I was a kid, and even then, it gave me chills. It felt right, though. Like, if anything was going to hold something like this, it would be that place. I didn't even park properly. I just pulled over, left the engine running. I carried the doll under my arm like it weighed 100 pounds. Every step I took into that graveyard felt heavier, like the air was pushing back against me. I found a small grave near the edge, half covered in vines. No name. Just a year. 1913. I placed the doll down gently. I don't know why. I could have thrown it, smashed it, but something told me not to. I whispered, "I'm sorry," stood there for a few seconds, and then walked back to my car without looking back. As I drove off, I remember this weird feeling washing over me. Relief, mixed with something colder, something that felt like it hadn't ended, just paused. I didn't know it then, but leaving it there was the worst mistake I could have made. The next morning started normal. I actually slept through the night for the first time in weeks. No whispers, no footsteps. I even laughed to myself while making coffee, thinking maybe I'd finally shaken the weirdness off. Maybe it really was just in my head all along. I stepped outside to grab the mail, and that's when I saw it. There, right on my front porch. The doll, sitting upright, same dress, same chipped cheek, same empty stare. My body froze. For a solid 10 seconds, I couldn't breathe. I looked around, half expecting someone to jump out and yell, "Gotcha!" But the street was dead quiet. No wind, no people. Just that thing, waiting. I didn't touch it. I backed into the house like it might lunge at me if I got too close. I locked the door, then the deadbolt. Then I closed every curtain in the house. I paced for hours, going over every possible explanation. Maybe someone followed me, saw me at the graveyard, dug it up as a sick joke. But who would do that? And how would they know where I left it? I checked my security cameras. Nothing. The footage from the night before just skipped. It went from midnight to 3:14 a.m. in a blink. No motion alerts, no signs of movement, like time just cut out. That afternoon, I left the doll on the porch and went to stay at a friend's place. I didn't tell them the whole story, just said I needed a break. But when I came back 2 days later, I found it inside, sitting at the kitchen table facing the door. That was the moment I stopped doubting myself. It wasn't a prank. It wasn't a glitch. After that, everything started to spiral. I tried to act normal. I really did. But the air in my house felt heavier, like I was constantly being watched. I moved the doll to the basement and locked the door. I even shoved a chair under the knob, like that would do anything. But it didn't matter. The next morning it was back in the living room, sitting on the couch like it never left. The lights started flickering constantly. Not just once or twice, but in these patterns, like Morse code I couldn't understand. I'd be lying in bed and suddenly the hallway light would blink rapidly, like something wanted me to come look. I stopped checking. I was too scared of what I might see. And the dreams, God, the dreams were the worst. I'd see myself standing in the graveyard, digging a hole, but when I reached the bottom, I wasn't burying the doll. I was digging myself up, my own body, dead, cold, staring. I'd wake up drenched in sweat, heart racing, only to find the doll had moved again. It wasn't just the dreams, though. I started hearing whispers behind doors. My name repeated over and over in a voice that didn't sound human. Sometimes it laughed, sometimes it cried. Once I swear I heard it say, "Let me in." I even tried getting rid of it again. Drove an hour out, left it in a dumpster behind a gas station, came home, locked everything. And guess what? It beat me back. This time it was in the shower, standing upright behind the curtain. I didn't even scream. I just stood there shaking. It wasn't just around anymore. It was inside. Inside my house. Inside my dreams. I knew I had to find out where the doll came from. What it was. Because whatever this thing was, it wasn't just haunted. It felt aware, like it had a purpose. So I started digging. I went back to the antique shop where I first picked it up. The old man behind the counter gave me this long, tired look. I asked him if he remembered selling it. He nodded slowly and said, "That doll wasn't meant to leave where it was." I asked what he meant, and he just muttered something about a donation box from a church estate, one that burned down decades ago. I pressed him, and eventually he pointed me toward a name, a retired librarian who used to catalog items from old local churches. Her house was filled with boxes of dusty books and handwritten records. She was kind, but when I showed her a photo of the doll, she went completely still. She told me it once belonged to a little girl named Eliza. Died young, sickness maybe, no parents, just a foster home. Her grave? The same one I left the doll on. That nameless stone, overgrown and cracked. That was Eliza's. The librarian said something strange then. She said people claimed Eliza never really left, that anyone who took the doll away from her resting place would be called back. I asked what that meant, and she just looked at me and whispered, "You brought it home. It never left her. Now it won't leave you." On the drive back, I couldn't stop shaking. My hands, my chest, it all felt wrong. And in my mind, I kept hearing that voice again. Let me in. The worst part, I couldn't live like that anymore. I was barely sleeping, barely eating. Mirrors started showing things that weren't there. Reflections lagging behind, shadows that didn't belong to me. Every corner of the house felt like it was watching, breathing, waiting. So I tried everything. I looked up rituals, cleansing spells, salt circles. I even brought in someone who claimed they were a medium. She lasted 5 minutes in the house before walking out pale and silent, said the energy was old, angry, and too far in. She told me one thing before leaving: don't fight it, return it. So that's what I did. I went back to the graveyard, not in daylight this time, at night under a sky so dark it felt like the stars were hiding. I brought candles, matches, a small spade, and the doll wrapped in a cloth, like I was laying someone to rest. I found Eliza's grave again. It felt different now, like something had been waiting for me to come back. I dug a small hole near the headstone, placed the doll inside, and covered it slowly. I whispered her name. I said I was sorry. I stayed there for a long time. The air was still. For the first time in weeks, I felt peace. No voices, no movement, just silence. I walked back to my car and didn't look back. I slept that night without nightmares. No laughter, no footsteps. The house felt calm, clean. I almost let myself believe it was over, that I'd done it right this time, that maybe, just maybe, I was free. But the next morning, the soil under my fingernails was still damp, and I didn't remember digging anything after. I got home. That was the first sign. For a few days, everything was quiet. Too quiet. No sounds, no dreams, no strange reflections or flickering lights. The house felt hollow, like the calm before a storm. And in that silence, I started to feel off. It wasn't fear anymore. It was something deeper, heavier, like a weight pressing against my chest every time I breathed. I'd stare at my own hands and not feel in them, like I was watching myself from somewhere else. Then came the mirror. I was brushing my teeth half awake, and I looked up, and for a split second, my reflection didn't move. It just stared back. I laughed it off, shook it away. But the next night, I saw her, not the doll. Her, a girl standing just behind me, pale, eyes like cracked glass. Her mouth didn't move, but I heard her voice in my head. You brought me home. I fell backwards, hit the sink hard. When I scrambled up, she was gone. But something had changed. I didn't feel like I was alone in my own mind anymore. I started finding drawings in my handwriting that I don't remember making. Childish sketches of graves, dolls, and broken faces. And I swear, I heard humming when I walked past the mirror. A lullaby I didn't know, but somehow remembered. That night I found the doll again, sitting on my bed. But this time I didn't feel scared. I felt welcome. I picked it up without thinking, sat down, stared into its eyes, and smiled. Because now I understand. It never wanted to haunt me. It wanted me to carry her. And I did. If you're hearing this, I don't know how much longer I'll still be me. Just do one thing. Don't touch the doll. Please. It's already looking for someone else. If you made it this far, you're braver than most. But the story isn't really over. Would you keep the doll if it came back to you? Comment below. What would you do? Smash that like button, subscribe for more nightmare fuel, and don't look behind you when the lights go out.